So a man goes on vacation, asks his brother to watch the cat, and the next day he calls and, says to the brother, "How's my cat?" He goes, "The cat's dead." And the brother says, "That's not how you tell someone that someone's dead. First day I call, you say, well, the cat is up on the roof and we're trying to get him down, but it doesn't look good. The second day when I call, say, yeah, the cat's really not looking good. We called the fire department, but they're not sure they can do anything. And then the third day I call and you say, the cat's dead." The brother goes, "Okay, I got the sequence now. Up on the roof, doesn't look good, cat's dead. Got it." So the brother says, "By the way, how's Mom?" "She's on the roof."
Welcome to Out of the Hills with Jon Wright. We are here today in Peru, Vermont at the Congregational Church, and we're going to interview one of my favorite people, Pastor Margaret. Come on in and join me. So, Margaret, it's such a privilege to be with you here in this space. Tell me a little bit about your family background and what brought you here to Vermont.
Well, I'm the fourth of 10 children. I grew up in Hyattsville, Maryland, right outside of D.C., and I was born in 1960, so I was born into an atmosphere of a lot of civil and political unrest, which I thought was the greatest thing ever. We typically had, helicopters going over the house, telling us to get in the house, that it was dangerous, and we just thought that was fabulous.
A world of chaos.
A world of chaos, and we loved it. We try to replicate it every chance we get.
It's your comfort zone.
It is my comfort zone. It's my familiar zone. But it's also greatly informed my ministry, in terms of going out a little further, being a little bit more on the line about who you're going to help, what you're going to preach, how you're going to make your church unique.
Tell me a little bit about your family dynamics. What did your parents do? Because all of that certainly influenced the person you are today.
We don't know what our father did. We think he was in the CIA. Possibly. And our mom took care of us until my father went bankrupt, and she went back to work as a nurse.
And supported the family.
And supported the family, yeah. And as one of the older children, I helped take care of the younger children. That was another big influence on my life, was rounding up children, rounding up parishioners, rounding up sheep. Get it? It's all about the flock.
Yeah. Part of what you do.
Yeah.
So that explains a lot.
Yeah, doesn't it?
So you traveled, you went to France for a period of time?
I lived in Paris for 2 years in college, and then my father, as I said, went bankrupt, and I had to come back to the United States. And when I did, my parents' vision was that I would take care of more of their children, the youngest children. And I said no, I would not do that. And I called my college roommate who lived in East Dorset, Vermont, and she said, "Come to Vermont for 2 weeks and we'll see what we can work out." And that was 35 years ago.
You never left?
Never left.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what brought you to the ministry? You were not in the ministry at that point?
No, I was. I had every kind of. When I dropped out of college, I had no degree, right? So I had no training to do anything whatsoever. So I started picking up jobs. I was a cocktail waitress. I was a picture framer. I took care of children. I was a bookkeeper. Anything to keep going. And so I knew, though, that I had a calling, that someday I would figure out why I was here on earth. And that came when I was 41 years old. I broke my ankle, and I had to spend 2 weeks in bed with my foot hanging above me.
That was here in Vermont?
Yeah. And during that time, I just realized that my time was running out. Time to go back to school. If I didn't go back to school soon, I wasn't going to go. And then I went to this church in Boston, It was exclusively directed toward gay men. And I went to service there, and it was amazing that the brothers there had developed programs specifically for the gay community. And I'm looking around at all the wonderful things they're doing, and I said to myself at that moment, if I could develop something different, if I could, create a ministry to the people on the fringes, on the edges, then I would do it. And the next thing I knew, I was there. I got a scholarship to seminary. Everything I finished my bachelor's degree. Everything just went in such a direction. I knew I was doing the right thing.
You were on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was in Boston that you went to?
Yeah, I was down in Boston visiting a friend, actually, and was very distraught about my future. And I kept asking God to reveal what I'm supposed to do, because, as we age, our possibilities become less and less. And so I knew I was right on that edge, and God
stepped in,
got going. Yeah.
And what brought you here to Peru, Vermont?
What brought me here to Peru, Vermont?
That wasn't supposed to be funny, but
Oh.
apparently it is. Tell me.
When I was in seminary, I was 2 years in, I had a nervous breakdown and was expelled from seminary, so I didn't get to finish it. And I came back to this area because it's all that I knew, And I was here for a very short time. I was only here for 10 days when I got a call from a friend of mine, Tracy Black. And she said, this was Christmas Eve, she said, we need you to come and sing tonight. We heard you were in town. You got a loud voice. Come and sing with us. And I said to her, I don't know any of those songs. And she said, neither do we.
And that was to sing here in the church? That was
to sing here. Tracy came and got me, and on the way up the mountain.
You learned the songs.
I wish. I said to Tracy, how's the Peru church? And she said, not good. We're going to close it. We don't have anyone to follow up. Kermit, my mentor, who had been the pastor here for 40 years, was too old to do it anymore. So she said, we're going to close it. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything but living in a basement. Why don't you let me come and take a shot at it? And that was 10 years ago. And we're doing exceedingly well.
Yeah. What was the congregation when you first came here? Like 10 people?
Yes.
And
11 the next week, 12 the next week.
26 the next week.
But I had nothing to lose. I was unemployed and, recovering from a breakdown. So there you go.
Yeah. Which all of us can relate to.
Yes, absolutely.
We've all been at, tough periods in our lives. And
absolutely.
Tell me about how do you resonate so well with people? I mean, there's just, you have a tremendously diverse congregation. You come to church barefoot.
Absolutely.
And go everywhere barefoot.
Yes.
You are, a legend in your own mind. You are a legend to all of us.
I'm going to smack you later on. Remind me.
But how do you reach out to people and appeal to people in such a strong way?
One of the ways that I do that is by saying, you haven't done anything I haven't done.
Right.
You haven't committed any sin or crime that I haven't as well.
I'm not sure about that.
And particularly coming into the ministry so late in life, there was a whole lot of time to mess up. So I think that we all have that need to be accepted for exactly who we are and exactly who we have been, right? And then move forward from there. How are we going to move forward from here? And I think that's a large part of the ministry, is trying not to be judgmental of one another.
Right. Yeah. The work for you is endless.
It's endless.
You are dealing with deaths, births, breakdowns. How do you, we've had this conversation to some degree because we're both caregivers. How do you take care of yourself in the midst all of this? See how I'm working this?
You are doing really well.
You taught me. You taught me this.
I really didn't think that question was going to come up.
How do you take care of yourself?
I don't.
Honestly? Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. And what are you going to do about that?
It's a major flaw of mine.
Yeah. You forget to take care of
particularly
yourself.
this past year. Well, probably you could take any year of any one of our lives and say, these major things happened that were really hard to recover from. But last year, you know, we had some very, very difficult times. One way I take care of myself is I get help. I get massages. I go to a therapist. I spend a lot of time talking to my sisters.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really working on taking more vacations, which I think has been a big flaw of mine in the past. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. You know, everything that has happened and every minute of the time I've been here has been
Fulfilling.
so much more than I could ever have imagined. So much more.
I hear over and over again what a wonderful community we have here. And, you know, I've lived here most of my life, so I sort of take it for granted. But even visitors that come here talk about the warm feeling that they get. And what makes, do you agree? Isn't this a kind of a unique area in that respect? And what is it about it? We have such a diverse population, and yet it seems like there's overwhelming goodness.
There is overwhelming goodness here, particularly coming from D.C., you know, where there is
No goodness.
You know, it's Sodom and Gomorrah down there. There is very little goodness down there. No disrespect to DC, but it just is true. You don't get the chance to get to know one another. I think one of the things is that we get to relax up here. We're not as worried about being robbed, you know, or someone taking our parking place. I think that when you have that kind of space,
you can be more relaxed.
Yeah, you can be more generous.
Yeah.
You know? And the generosity is, because we are in such a constant, you know, small town, it's known by everybody. If you do something nice to somebody, everyone knows about it, and they're inspired by it, and they want to be a part of it. I really think people are much more inclined towards being good and helpful and charitable than they are towards being rotten, you know, and jealous.
Right. Likewise, in a small community, the people that are rotten or whatever quickly stand out.
They quickly stand out, and they don't
last long.
They don't last long, and they don't get to reap the goodness that is here, which is sad.
Yeah.
But that's rare. I think most people move here with good intentions and contribute to the community as they can.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about Kermit, your mentor.
My Kermit. When I was living down in Manchester, Kermit was the legend. He was the man on the mountain. And people would say to me, wait till you hear his eulogies. People literally wanted to die before Kermit, so he would give their eulogy. He wrote the most beautiful. And he had no training for this whatsoever. He had a degree in English that he got in, you know, the 1950s, somewhere in there. But he was called in by the people. He was not a pastor, any kind of ordained pastor or licensed pastor. The people asked him to come and do their weddings, so he became a JP, baptized their babies in the kitchen sink. You know, he was the RFD, mailman, right? So he went from house to house. He knew everybody. Everybody knew him. And he was a highly trusted, highly respected man.
And he was gay.
He was gay. He was gay, you know.
Which, at that point in time, was somewhat unique in this community.
Yeah.
He and his father lived adjacent to me at Taylor Farm, and we interacted quite often. And I would see him walking on the road as I went from field to field, and I'd stop the tractor, and he'd engage in some wonderful thought of that moment.
Right.
And he was very, very special.
He was a great man, and he taught me so much. There are so many holes from my seminary experience. For example, how to go visit someone who's sick.
Yeah.
I didn't learn that in seminary. I learned that from Kermit. He dragged me into Ken Batchelder's house where he was dying, and he goes, "This is how you do it, Margaret." And he taught me how to do a wedding. He taught me all of those things, you know. And his being gay, I think, enlarged this community amazingly.
Yes, yeah.
I think, once again, you can't say, I don't know anybody who's gay. I mean, the holy man of the mountain, he's gay. How about that? Let's start there.
Right. Yeah.
I think he would be so pleased if he had lived to see the Supreme Court decision. That always makes me cry when I think about that he missed that.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was so open about it and so comfortable with himself.
Yeah.
And that was...
But it wasn't his whole identity. That was the other thing. It was just a part of his identity.
Yeah.
And he and his life partner, very well respected and invited and loved. And, he opened up a lot of people's minds.
Did you ever preach together here?
We did a lot of funerals together.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Tag teaming.
Well, people wanted him.
Yeah.
And he would say, well, I'm training this ingenue, so why don't we let Margaret include it in this? And he did it beautifully. I mean, he was an extremely good man and a good friend, and I miss him every day. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me, how what gives you inspiration? Week to week, you've got to come up with a sermon.
It's the worst part of the job.
And you have, every time I've heard you speak, which is probably not as often as I should have, it has been powerful. Are there some weeks where you're just at a loss for what you're going to speak about, or is there something every week that just moves you in?
I would say let's just say it's the hardest part. Anyone who thinks otherwise, you're wrong.
Yeah.
That is funerals have their own beauty and weddings are kind of annoying, but the sermon every week, you got to come up with something. I am, from my years of bartending, I have learned to listen to people talk, and large groups of people talk, and they pretty much tell me what they are seeking in the sermon. What is going on in the culture right now? I mean, right now it's the refugees, that washing up on shore, that little 3-year-old boy that has so expanded our knowledge of the world, particularly living here in this little corner where everything is all cute and beautiful. So typically something comes up, either I can draw from my past or from somebody coming down the street. Someone last week came down the street and said, do a sermon on the fact that none of us are separate from one another. And so you start researching that and thinking about that, and you get inspiration. The Holy Spirit comes, and it just comes together.
Like I say, anytime I've heard you, it is.
That's what I head right straight for. First the heart, then the head.
Yeah. Well, you do a remarkable job.
Thank you.
There are, within the community, there are always issues that arise, political issues. Do you find yourself sometimes struggling with which side of the fence you're on, or do you try to stay neutral with all?
What do you think, John? I'm not neutral about anything. I find myself struggling incredibly. Yeah. I'm already very discouraged about the political candidates we have right now, and the way that there was a horrible thing on television this morning about what Donald Trump said about Carly Fiorina. And they're both Republicans, so that's not even a party issue, but just the meanness of one another.
At a time when we need, so much love and support in this world.
Right. And there are definitely people, that I don't get along with. Definitely people I struggle to like.
I'm not one of them.
You are not one of them. Surprise! No, but that is a hard thing, because I am a very opinionated, very, I definitely have my beliefs, and you gotta water them down a little bit and listen to the other person. But the greatest thing is when you come into a relationship and you don't like the person and you come to love them. Yes. You come to see what is wonderful about them, and giving and charitable and all communal. That's some of the people running, that give the most to the community are the people you would least expect to. And that can really soften your heart towards that other person, but you have to allow that to happen. You have to let go of some of your judgment.
You have to be non-judgmental.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Margaret, I think we're sadly running out of time, but I just want to point out the mural here. Tell me a little bit, this is such a prominent feature of the church. Tell me about that. This speaks to me as an agrarian.
Right.
But tell me, who painted it? What's the prominence of this piece?
Cecil Grant painted it in 1931. In 1929, he was part of the stock market crash. He was a stockbroker and lost everything. But they let him keep his house in Londonderry. And he came up here as a little guy. He couldn't do any farming. He couldn't do anything strenuous. So he went door to door looking for work, and he came here, and there were 3 women here from Ladies' Aid, right? They were having their lady meeting. And they said, he asked them, do you have any jobs for us? And they said, well, we always wanted a mural to go there of Bromley Mountain. Since we can't see Bromley because of the trees, we'd like to have Bromley in here. And he gave them a price of $50. And he worked on it for a long time, I think 3 months or 4 months or something like that. And came up with this magnificent, irreplaceable piece of art. He went on to become a very famous artist who hangs in museums around the world. And they were so pleased with it, they gave him $100. Which back then was, like $10,000 in the middle of the Depression, so it was.
Especially here?
Yeah, it's very, very dear to our hearts, and we have special illumination for it and all that stuff. So.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
We'll talk more, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
I'm working on it. I'm nervous. You guys have me so nervous.
All right, come on out, Mr. Professional.
Thank you all for joining me for yet another episode of Out of the Hills. Hope you enjoy it.
Hey, right, you promised me cheese.
Oh, Margaret, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for coming.
We'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Well, that boy,